Hi YouTube, it's Kathy. I woke up looking like this. Let's film a video. So yes, we are in the latter half of January. Usually somebody like me would try to get up an end of the year content video closer to the end of the year, but you know what? I had other things to do, / I've been tired, / excuses. People still want this? Here it is. As I expected, given the only goal I really remember making at the beginning of the year, I read less books this year than previous years. Every year on BookTube, up until 2022, I have read more than 200 books in that year. In 2022, I read 179 books and DNF'd 1 book for a total of 57,289 pages. That takes into account converting audiobook minutes to pages, and I did not calculate how many of those pages were actually audiobooks, but I can tell you it was a total of 807 hours of audio. Although technically it was less than that because I do not listen at one-time speed unless I'm listening to something with Chad. So like maybe 50 of those hours were just at one-time speed, everything else was at least 1.25. I haven't really gone through this information. I mostly just looked at the spreadsheet I've been using, which I've been using since 2017, and I've literally just been updating the spreadsheet every year. But this was the spreadsheet that was created by Brock Roberts, and that channel name is Brock's Book Bag. I've literally been using the same spreadsheet and just copying it and changing the years every year. I know that he updates it. I haven't done that. Just because in case they change anything, I don't want to change how I've been doing it year to year, month to month, so that I can look at the exact same stats every time I do a monthly wrap-up video. So that's why I use the exact same one except for updated by year. Also, I'm pretty sure that even though I've thought about doing a year-long wrap-up and going through all the stats from an entire year, I don't think I've actually done it before. So this will be fun. I'm just going to go through some of the charts. I will put the charts up when I'm talking about them, and you can take what you will from certain things. I'm also going to talk a little bit about my goals for this year and what I expect my reading to look like this year, and some of the reasons, besides the fact that I wanted to read less books, why I ended up, in fact, reading less books than previous years. Alright, it seems as good a place as any to start. Let's start with genre. It looks like, technically, the biggest piece of the genre pie for me was nonfiction at 19% of my reading this year. That's followed pretty closely by contemporary at 18.4, and fantasy at 15.6, and historical fiction at 16.8, so it was even more. Then of course also mystery thriller, and then we've got these tiny little pie pieces that are like science fiction and science fantasy and romance and horror and poetry and general fiction, whatever the heck that means. And if you adjust by pages per genre, the chart looks slightly different. Here it is for you to figure out for yourself. Additionally, audiobooks were definitely a big thing for me in 2022. They've been a big thing all the time, but I did read a lot of them. Let's see, I read 77 audiobooks, 31 ebooks, 44 paperbacks, 27 hardcovers, and then one thing that I found on the web, and I think that was for a readathon or something, I can't remember. As for the length of books, most of what I read was novels, as per usual. That was 151 of these things were novels, but then I also read 13 graphic novels. I read 1 short story, which is probably the thing from the web. I read 7 anthologies, and I read 8 novellas. When it comes to digital reading versus physical reading, I read mostly digitally. 109 of the things that I read were digital and 71 were physical books. When it comes to page count, this is not really a surprise to me because usually I am in that 300 to 399 page range, although it does look like I did read 1 book that's over 600 pages, and I want to say it was probably The Gamble. The Gamble was the one that was over 600 pages. That one was a romance that took place in Colorado, and it was really long for a romance. I ended up enjoying it, but I was also reading it digitally, so I didn't know how long it was until I finished it. I was like, are you kidding me? The chart tells me that there are 2 books. The other one I have to imagine is probably Jade City, but I don't know for sure. As for the publication year of what I was reading, I read a couple of books from the 70s, a couple of books from the 90s. I read 9 books that were published in the 2000s. I read 32 books published between 2010 and 2019, and I read 135 books published in this decade. As for where I got these books, mostly from the library. That still makes me happy, even though I no longer work at the library, that I am using it so heavily. Mind you, at least 42 of these were from a digital app, which means I didn't have to go to the library because I get my audiobooks via a library app, but still. 112 of these things were from the library. I got 4 I read on Kindle, 5 I read via book boxes, 3 I borrowed, 3 from friends, 2 from independent bookstores, 3 from chain bookstores, 15 NetGalleys. I probably should have read more of those, but I didn't, and I can't change that now. 2 were from Book Depository, 5 were free, so from little free libraries or something like that. 13 were from publishers, 5 were from authors, 3 were from Amazon, and 5 I already owned. That's pretty bad. Although often when I've already owned something, I will think back to how I purchased it, so I never really make a big distinction between already owned and how I actually purchased it in the first place. So that's a flaw in my system, but I'm usually the only one that looks at this data, so it doesn't really matter to me. This seems like as good a time as any to tell you about some of the reasons why I've read fewer books than previous years. One of them has to do with this mug that I'm holding onto. This is merch from a channel called Bratterstein. Brittany, if you're here, hi, thank you for joining me. I highly doubt it though, because this is not exactly what you do on your channel. Bratterstein is a true crime channel. I have been watching a lot of true crime. In fact, when I'm working, I pretty much always have a true crime video going. And that means that I've watched most of the things on this channel and several other channels. And unlike BookTube, it is not uncommon for them to have hour-long or longer videos. Some of the videos I watch that are true crime are, you know, 3, 4, 5, 8-part series, and each video is like 2 hours plus. So, yeah. That's been a lot of my time where I could have technically been reading. In addition, while I'm listening to that true crime and waiting for work to come in, I am often cross-stitching. This is the year I took up cross-stitching. I had done a few when I was like 12, but I haven't touched it since, and this year I don't know how many things I made, but I want to say at least 15. Including my first ever stitch-along, which was a Practical Magic inspired stitch-along, which was absolutely beautiful. I made some owls, I made a Hunger Games one. I'm gonna insert photos here of some of the projects because they are cool. I'm currently working on one that is the exterior of Black's Books from the TV show Black's Books, and I'm so excited for when it is eventually done because it will be the biggest I've ever done. It's over 37,000 stitches, so it's gonna take me a while. All right, let's go back to some stats, see what else is on this spreadsheet for me. When it comes to whether or not I purchased something or whether or not it was free, 159 of these items were free and 21 were purchased, assuming I filled out this spreadsheet correctly. When it comes to star ratings, this looks like a normal month for me, minus the couple that are like 2 and 2.5 star reads. I like to read things I think I'm going to at least sort of enjoy, and for me a 3-star is sort of enjoy, and then it goes up from there. So I didn't really have that many things that I did not enjoy because I don't want to put myself through that. I'm reading for fun. So I had 1 2-star read, and I'm pretty sure that's my DNF. I had 1 2.5-star read, I had 12 3-star reads, 27 3.5-star reads, 60 4-star reads, 42 4.5-star reads, and 37 5-star reads. So like, I like to read things. I'm pretty easy to please. I think that my average star rating for the year is like, it says it on one of the sheets, but I'm not gonna bother looking it up. I think it's like 4.18. So like, I star pretty high, but again, that's because I know I'm reading things that I'm probably going to enjoy. This one is an interesting one that I hadn't really looked at before. It's pages read by month, and looking at it, it makes total sense that in June I read the most pages. That's because Queer Lib Readathon. Then I think that December is probably the second most. Let me just look. December was 5,503, whereas January was 5,363. So on the graph they look pretty close, but yes, December I had more than January, and then yeah, it's all just up and down. You can definitely tell that I was on a trip in September and October because less reading, and then What the heck happened to me in November? Did I just burn out? I probably just burned out. That's why that was the lowest reading month. As for other charts on here, no surprise to me, 118 of these books were written by female authors, 42 were written by male authors, 16 by non-binary authors, and 4 of these books were written by more than one author with mixed genders. As for protagonist genders, 97 of them had female protagonists, 39 had male protagonists, 12 had dual protagonists, so again more than one protagonist or point of view character, and their genders were not the same. 12 of them did not have protagonists, so this is probably some of the non-fiction I talked about before, which again was apparently the biggest part of my genre pie, which I did not know ahead of time, so that's cool to know. 4 protagonists were non-binary, and 16 books had ensemble casts, so I couldn't pick a protagonist. As for age groups, this one actually surprises me, although not too much, because throughout the year I did notice that I was leaning more towards reading adult books than YA books. It's usually been like a 50-50 with a little bit of middle grade in there, but this year I read 132 adult books, 43 YA books, and only 5 middle grade books. As for countries I read from, the US continues to dominate this chart with 102 books set in the US. However, I did have 12 from Canada, 20 from the United Kingdom, 25 that were set in other worlds, and I had somebody wondering about this. Other worlds means it's literally set somewhere that's not on Earth, so it's not just me being like, I don't know where this is set, let's put it in other worlds. No, this is just, it's not set on Earth, so I can't give you a country. I also had 2 set in Australia, 1 in Indonesia, 1 in Japan, 3 in France, 1 in Trinidad, 1 in Hungary, 1 in China, 1 in Mexico, 1 in Cuba, 1 in Antarctica, 1 in the Netherlands, 1 in Ghana, 1 in Germany, 1 in Qatar, which I can tell you is one of my 2 rereads. I read this book every year. 1 in New Zealand, 1 in Argentina. If you want to see the countries in a more fun way than this pie chart, this is what it looks like on a world map. Alright, we're getting there. There was just a very loud, noisy truck, so I decided to turn off the camera while it did its thing. As for diversity, no surprise that the biggest chunk of this pie is queer books, and that is 58 books that are queer but don't have another intersectionality. When we come to combo, that means intersectionality, so it could be queer and race, or queer and disability, or it could be disability and race. I don't have the right numbers as to what the combos are, but if there is more than one intersection of a minority, this is where they go, and I read 41 books that were intersectional or combo. I had read 7 books about disability, 11 about mental health, 18 about race, 1 about religion, 3 that were translated, 5 that were feminist, 1 that was own voices, 2 where the author had some form of diversity but the book wasn't about that, and then 33 that didn't have any discernible diversity. And I think with that, those are all the fun charts. Let me just scan through, make sure I didn't miss anything major. There's also this other tab called Summary. Let me see if there's any information on there that I didn't get from looking at the charts. Nope, this page did its job and gave me all the information on the charts. Once I made sure that I had actually updated all of the things on this page to 2022, because some of them still read 2017, and that's inaccurate. As for my reading in 2023 and some reflections on 2022, you might have noticed that in 2022 I only participated in, I want to say, 2 readathons. Possibly more, but I hosted 2. I hosted all the rounds of the Queer Lit Readathon that happened. I also hosted the Rent Readathon with my friend Beck. And I want to say that's probably all of the ones I actually participated in. I used to, every year, have multiple readathons per month that I did TBRs for and I read for, and that's probably, again, the reason why I was reading over 200 books a year. But in 2022, I kind of took a step back from readathons. It wasn't even really a conscious thing. It was more of a I'm burning out thing. I even did a video and made a tag about that. It's called the Overwhelmed Book Tag. If you want to check that out, I will link it down below. I cannot remember if I made it in 2021 or 2022, but it still feels pretty relevant. I still want to read all the things. I want to talk about all the things. But at the same time, I have other hobbies now. In addition to watching too many true crime videos to the point where I start watching a video and I'm like, oh, I've already heard this case from a different person and I'll move on to another video. And in addition to doing all of the cross-stitching, which again, I'm very much enjoying. Back in November, I also joined my local YWCA, so I've been doing that between 1 and 4 times a week, depending on the week. I, in particular, am very much enjoying the cardio dance classes I go to because it's like going to a dance class when I was a kid, except for I'm dying. It gets my heart rate real high and I get real frustrated when I don't do the steps correctly. Or if my legs just don't want to do the steps. But it's also a lot of fun and it's a good way to get my heart rate going and it's a good way to take care of myself. Going into 2023, I'm going to be continuing all of the things I just talked about. In addition to that, between the months of March and May, I don't think I'm going to read all that many physical books. And the reason for that is I will be in Europe. Chad and I are going to Europe. We are going to start in the UK, go over to the Netherlands, then down to Germany, to the Czech Republic or Czechia. It's similar to how like we call France, France and not the French Republic. That's what the Czech Republic is called, Czechia, but I keep forgetting how to actually pronounce it. But Chad actually speaks Czech, so one day he will actually drill into my brain how to pronounce that. We are also possibly going to go to Hungary as well as maybe a couple of other locations. Oh yeah, and I'll be maintaining my 30-hour work week while we do it. So that's fun. Although, like I said, I probably won't be reading a lot of physical books because we're going to be packing pretty light so we can fly over and not have to check bags and all of that type of stuff. I will be reading digitally on my phone via my audiobook app as well as the Kindle app as well as other things people have sent to me and all of that. So I'm really hoping to read a bunch of the NetGalleys that I have received and not actually read over the years. That would be nice. And then of course I will also be going to bookstores while I'm there. So if I buy 1 or 2 books here or there and then maybe leave them in free little libraries if they exist over there or leave them with friends, I'm going to also see some friends. So we'll see how that goes. So this is not me saying that I'm going to stop reading books and won't have bookish content because I have never had a week in the 315 weeks since I started doing weekly wrap-ups and started being a booktuber where I didn't have at least 1 book to talk about. Since I started listening to audiobooks, it's been at least 2 books every week to talk about. And I have no plans on stopping that. However, this does mean that I will have more travel-related content, which I am very excited for. The last time I was in Europe was before I started making YouTube videos. In fact, when I moved to Europe, I think it was the 1st or 2nd year that YouTube existed, and it was definitely a platform for like cat videos, and that's all I really knew about it. Not to mention in 2007 when I lived in Ireland, we didn't even have internet in the home. We had to go to cyber cafes. But I'm really excited for this trip. I'm going to some places I've been before, I'm going to a lot that I have not been before, and I'm just really excited to bring you along with me. I'm also really excited I'm going to meet at least 1 booktube friend that I've never met before in person because obviously we live in different places, so that's going to be a lot of fun. I hope to meet a couple of more if I have the chance, but I know there's at least 1 who's like, heck yes, you're coming to my city, we are meeting up. So maybe Jean and I will plan a collab. I don't know what's going to happen, I'm just excited to see her face in person. So there you have it. I feel like this video was kind of chaotic in points, but it also has a bunch of graphs and stats, so that should bring it all together. If you have any questions about my reading in 2022, let me know down below. If you have any questions about my reading plans or other plans for 2023, let me know that as well. I will again, of course, be hosting all the rounds of the Queer Lit Readathon this year, and I will post the link down below to the dates for that because we always set the dates the year ahead of time. And there's a wonderful surprise about June if you haven't seen it already. With that, again, I think it's time to go. All comments and questions down below, that would be great. Or you can tell me about your reading year. What was something you really loved? What was something you really didn't love? Just let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you're here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below, as well as so many other links. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!